Police in Mpumalanga say they've located a girl who was kidnapped over 20 years ago. She was taken as an infant, snatched from her 16-year-old mother shortly after birth at the Ermelo Provincial Hospital. This was in 2001. Tonight, we're able to speak to both her sibling, who discovered her via social media, Senzo Mashiloane. But before we get to him, we're going to speak to Gogo Mashiloane, who is this young woman's grandmother. She's joining us via a live link which we've set up. And Gogo and I will speak in, I believe, it's Iswati and Xhosa. Gogo, Sabona Gogo, welcome to News at Prime. Niziva kanjani xa senimfumene umntana wenu?
Siziva sijabulile kakhulu.
Senimbonile yena?
Simbonile izolo besinaye.
So nakwazi ba nithethe, nathini xa nithetha?
Askis?
Xa nimbona izolo, niye nakwazi ukuncokola nithethe ngento eyenzekileyo?
Ikhaya. Asikakhulumi lutho.
Oh, okay. So, Gogo, umntana wenu uthathwe ngo-2001, ethathwa kumamakhe esandozalwa. Le minyaka benihleli ningamazi ba uphi, beniziva kanjani?
Bengasimnandi empilweni besihlangahlangene nje ngoba kunalombuzo besizibuza wona ukuthi kazi sisezomthola yini noma ngeke siphinde simthole sibe singazi vele ukuthi mhlawumbe usaphila noma akasaphili kodwa besinethemba nje ukuthi siyomthola uma aphila.
So xa isiza umfana uSenzo esithi kuni umfumene ngoFacebook, niye nathi xa nisiva ezo ndaba?
Sajabula kodwa besisafuna singakabi nayo isho ukuthi kungenzeka vele kube nguye shosho kodwa yena ngesotsha bengimbona ukuthi ufana nomama wakhe.
And umama yena xa sithetha namhlanje uqhuba kanjani okonive ezindaba, uright?
Uright kakhulu, akusafani nasemalangeni.
Uthe nimbonile izolo usisi, nizaphinda nimbone nini, yazi uba nizawumbona nini?
Yebo siyazi. Sizombona ngoLwesihlanu.
So Gogo, xa nisiya phambili, yeyiphi yena nto nifuna ubona uba yenzeke? Nifuna ukwakha ubudlelwane nimfake efamilini as umntana wenu, okanye ubona uba nizawuqhuba kanjani?
Sifuna abuye ahlale nathi ngoba siyamdinga, kukhona le space esivulekile njengoba sesimtholile mara futhi angasekho eduze kwethu. Manje singajabula nje kakhulu nangabuya sihlale ndawonye.
And benifunda ephepheni kuthiwa uzawuthathwa asiwe for i-counselling so that bazokwazi ba bamncede uba abe right emoyeni emva kwalento yenzekileyo, nento yoba afumanise uba ebebiwe essentially in 2001. Nina niyayidinga i-counselling as a family?
For thina siyayidinga nathi ngoba sisengabi right kahle.
Xa usithi anikabi right kahle Gogo, uthetha ukuthini? Yeyiphi yona nto inihluphayo ngalo mzuzu?
Into esihluphayo manje ukuthi akafuni ukuhlala nathi.
Uthi kutheni engafuni uhlala nani?
Ukhuluma ukuthi nje ngathi usengeke khone ukuhlala kule family ngoba ngathi usengakhoni kahle ukumukela, manje ufuna ukuthi masimdedele abuyele emuva toti aze ajwayeleke, mhlawumbe uzothuka inhliziyo yakhe seyivumile ukuthi abuye azohlala nathi.
And nina as ifamily ke xa enobuyela emva abuyele kwabantu behlala nabo, inganiphatha kanjani?
Siphatheke kabi vele sibhlungu nje kukumanje ngoba vele kwayizolo uvele wahamba vele wabuyela khona le. Amthathile bu detective bahamba naye bafike bamshiya khona le.
So kuyacaca then kokuba izawunithatha ixesha into yoba nidibane nikwazi uba niyilungise le nto niphole nina nomntana.
Ukusho ukuthi kanjalo sizolinda ke ukuthi aze abe happy yena kumana afuna ukuthi ahlangane nathi noma ahlale nathi.
Enkosi kakhulu gogo Mashiloane, hopefully into zeninomntana wenu intombi yenu sizawulunga ke nikwazi uba nithethisane nifike endaweni nikwazi uba niphilisane kakuhle. Enkosi mama. All right, that was Gogo Mashiloane. She is the grandmother. Just to give you a translation of that conversation, I'll summarize it very briefly. News broke this week that her granddaughter, who's now almost 20, was snatched in Ermelo in 2001, not too long after birth. Here's how it all unfolded. Her brother saw a picture of her on social media, Facebook, and thought, well, this young woman bears a resemblance to the family. He then alerted police, and then DNA testing was conducted, and eventually it was a match, and then she basically found out, the young woman, the 19-year-old, that this is indeed her biological family. But if you remember the Zephany Nurse story in the Western Cape, it's quite similar in many ways, where a child was snatched only to learn in their later years that actually the people who raised you as your parents are not your parents. And as Gogo was telling us, one of the things the family is battling with, the Mashiloane family is battling with tonight, is that at their meeting with the young woman, what she said was that she's unable really to, for lack of a better word, come together or integrate with the family, and she'd like to go back to the people that she was living with, go back to the life that she knew, and then only once she is at peace, I suppose, with the developments of the last few days, will she be able to make a decision on whether she wants to be part of the family as well. But the family really struggling now with a lot of the emotional work that will have to be done moving forward. We're fortunate now to be able to speak to her brother, Senzo Mashiloane. He is the one who identified his sister via Facebook. Senzo, if you can hear me, a very good evening. Welcome to News at Prime. Let's start at the beginning with how you connected with the young woman who's now your sister and realized that she may be a relative.
Oh, okay. Ukuze mina ngithole usesi wami ngimthole ku Facebook, bengiscrolla and then ngambona ku people you may know. After that ngachecka ama profile wakhe because bengifuna ukum-add as a friend, and then after lokho some of her pics bengiwafanisa no bhuti wami omncane kanti bengiseduze nogogo, and then ngakhombisa yena ugogo and then yena amfanisa nomama.
So xa umbona umfanisa Senzo
nami kwezinye ithombe
sorry Senzo, ungagqibezela bhuti.
Okay, mangimbona nami kwezinye ithombe bengimbona ukuthi ufana naye umama, vele bebafana.
So xa umbona uba uyafana nefamily yakho, umntana kowenu nomama akho, uye wabaxelela uba umfumene umuntu ofana nabo ku Facebook okanye uye wathini kuqala?
Okokuqala ngakhombisa ugogo ukuthi uyambona yini this girl ukuthi ufana nobani, and then washo ugogo ukuthi naye umfanisa nomama, and then vele almost ngabakhomba bonke la endlini ukuthi bayambona na.
So ubusazi wena uba unosisi olahlekileyo?
Bengazi ukuthi nginayo usisi owalahleka.
So emapoliseni ifike njani le ndaba?
Emaphoyiseni indaba yafika ngokuthi ugogo aye kufuna umuzi eCarolina la bekuhlala khona usisi, and then mase katholile wahamba waye emaphoyiseni, and then babisi baya nawo amaphoyisa kuloyo muzi ukuyoconfirma ukuthi ikhona na la bekuhlala khona usisi.
And besixelela ugogo a few minutes ago that nimbonile usisi wakho izolo but ngalomzuzu akakafuni ba azohlala nani okanye asondele kakhulu. Wena uziva njani ngaleyo?
Ngaloko mina okungijabulisayo ukuthi ngimbonile after isikhathi nje esiningi alahleka singamazi, mara futhi kuphinde kube buhlungu ngoba usengakafuni ukuzohlala nathi, mara ngiyathemba ukuthi as long isikhathi sihamba uzokhona ukusijwayela makasoloko eza azohlala nathi. Isikhathi maybe sizohamba asijwayele and then uzokhona ukubuya azohlala nathi.
And in terms of uncedo endizaludinga as usapho, yeyiphi into endizayidinga xa ujongile?
Ngiphindele.
Benisithi as far as uncedo xa ujonga wena isimo enikuso, what kind of help are you going to need as a family?
Usizo maybe esingalidinga ukuthi mhlambe ukuthi umama naye ubaba mhlambe bathole i-counseling because indaba vele azange baphathe kahle since umntwana alahleka. Yiloko nje nathi as abanye azange siphathe kahle, so singajabulela lokho.
Senzo Mashiloane, enkosi kakhulu bhuti for uthetha nathi namhlanje.
Ngiyabonga.
Senzo Mashiloane, the younger brother to a woman who has now essentially come to know her biological family, or at least been introduced to them, I should say, in the last few days after Senzo, her brother, says he saw her on the People You May Know section on Facebook and realized that she bore a resemblance to some of the other family members. He then took the picture, took it back to his grandmother, and through various conversations it was then confirmed that this was the family's long-lost daughter who was taken around 2001. Senzo saying that the one thing that he thinks his family is going to need at the moment is help, especially with his parents, who, like their daughter, are dealing with a lot in terms of processing emotionally the news of the last few days, realizing that a daughter they lost 20 years ago is indeed alive and well, but there's a lot of mending of relations, a building of a relationship at this stage because they don't know each other. She was taken as an infant by a woman who had offered help to her mother, a story that sadly is not uncommon in the South African context. Mweli Masilela is our reporter in Mpumalanga, and he will track that story because a woman in her 50s who's believed to have abducted the young woman is now in custody. She was arrested on the back of DNA tests confirming that this young woman's DNA matched Senzo, the Mashiloane family's DNA. But for now, we appreciate them speaking to us, as you can imagine. Still very in the early stages of dealing with this, so not really able in some parts to speak at length about their ordeal.